I never expected the engagement party to end the way it did. People still ask me how everything unraveled in a single moment, and I always tell them the same thing. It wasn't the speeches. It wasn't the overflowing champagne or the string quartet playing modern love songs. It wasn't even the massive engagement cake with handcrafted sugar flowers. It was my 9-year-old son standing up during the toasts and asking my mother if he should read the diary she left at our house. The diary she never meant for anyone to read. The diary where she wrote who my sister's real father actually is. The entire room went silent. Forks stopped in midair. Conversations froze. My sister Sarah's smile collapsed before she even understood what he meant. My mother's face drained of every bit of color. My father looked like he had been struck across the chest, and I stood there, completely stunned, with the microphone still in my hand, wishing for a second that time would rewind. But deep down, another part of me, the part that had been ignored, brushed aside and belittled for years, felt something crack open. A truth that had been buried under layers of silence finally clawed its way up. Before I take you into that moment, let me tell you who everyone in this story is, because context is everything. My name is Rachel Avery, and I'm the one who has always been described as the difficult daughter, the messy one, the one who never did anything right. At least that's how my mother sees me. I'm in my late 30s, divorced, raising my son Evan on my own, and trying every single day to hold things together without making anyone uncomfortable. It's a strange life to live. Being the person who tries hardest not to cause trouble, only to be labeled as the problem anyway. My mother, Linda Avery, plays a central role in this story. She's 60 years old, sharp, passionate about appearances, and fully convinced she knows best about everything. To outsiders, she seems warm, enthusiastic, and put together. But to me, she's someone who measures worth by achievements, social standing, and how well you fit the picture she wants to present to the world. And unfortunately, I have never fit her picture. My sister, Sarah Avery, is 4 years younger than me. Everyone loves her. She has the kind of smile that makes people lean in, the kind of personality that draws attention without trying. She's charming, organized, financially stable, and engaged to a man my mother practically treats like royalty. Sarah doesn't see herself as the golden child, but she benefits from it in ways she's never fully acknowledged. My father, David Avery, is quiet. He rarely argues with my mother, which means he rarely defends me. He's not unkind, but he's avoidant. When conflict rises, he disappears into silence, almost like a reflex. And then there is my son, Even, the brave heart of this story. He's 9 years old, small for his age, but sharper than most adults I know. He observes everything, absorbs everything, and remembers every word that hurts me, even when I pretend it doesn't. He's the kind of child who listens at the wrong moments, but for the right reasons. He doesn't like unfairness. He doesn't tolerate disrespect. And when he sees someone he loves being mistreated, he acts. All of these people came together the night everything fell apart. I started the evening trying to blend in, trying not to draw attention, trying not to irritate my mother with anything I wore or said. But it didn't matter, because the second she took the microphone to give her opening toast, she said something that burned deep into me. She lifted her glass, beaming at Sarah, and announced loudly, "Finally, one daughter I'm proud of." Gasps spread through the room. A few awkward laughs followed, the kind that show people don't know where to look. My sister winced, but my mother kept smiling like she had just delivered the joke of the night. I felt Evan squeeze my hand. His fingers tightened, and when I glanced down, I saw his eyes narrow in a way no 9-year-old's eyes should. He whispered, "She shouldn't talk to you like that, Mom." I tried to calm him. I whispered back, "It's okay, let's just get through tonight." But he didn't look convinced. He looked determined. He looked like a child storing every unkind word, every dismissive tone, every moment of humiliation I endured. He looked like someone building a quiet fire. And when he finally stood and asked my mother if she wanted him to read the diary she left at our house, I realized something I had ignored for years. Silence might protect peace, but speaking the truth protects the person being wounded. And that night, my son was done watching me bleed. Long before the engagement party spiraled into chaos, life in our family followed a familiar pattern. My mother praised my sister for everything she did and criticized me for everything I didn't. It didn't matter how small the accomplishment or how insignificant the mistake was. Sarah breathed correctly in my mother's eyes. I existed inconveniently. But despite all that, I tried to keep a fragile peace. I wanted my son, Evan, to experience family gatherings without tension, even if that meant swallowing my pride and keeping my distance when my mother started her commentary. Some part of me always hoped things might change or soften with time. I imagined someday she might look at me with a hint of pride or even neutrality instead of disappointment. A week before the engagement party, I walked into my parents' house with Evan to help finalize some decorations. My mother was in the kitchen rearranging the charcuterie boards for the 10th time. Sarah stood by the counter, leaning against it with her usual easy confidence, scrolling through Pinterest for floral inspiration. The moment I walked in, my mother's eyes flicked over me. "You couldn't find something nicer to wear? This is an important day." I had on jeans and a sweater. We were prepping decorations, not hosting a gala. "Mom, it's fine, we're just setting up," I answered quietly. Sarah looked up, offering a sympathetic wince. "Mom, stop, it's just us." My mother waved her off. "I'm just saying, Rachel should put in a little effort. She's representing this family, too." I glanced at Evan, who had stiffened beside me. He didn't speak, but I knew he was filing the moment away. He always noticed more than I wanted him to. The house was filled with engagement excitement. Boxes of centerpieces covered the dining table. A local caterer was supposed to bring samples later. It should have been a warm, bonding moment for all of us. But with every comment, every side-eyed glance, every sigh from my mother, I felt myself shrinking. When my father came downstairs, he greeted me with a quiet, "Hey, kiddo," and gave Evan a pat on the head. He didn't intervene in the tension, but he offered a softer presence than my mother's constant critiques. He asked about Evan's school project and then drifted back toward the living room to avoid another argument he didn't want to witness. Sarah, to her credit, tried to keep things light. She told us about her fiancé Tyler's family, how they were hosting the rehearsal dinner, how welcoming and sweet his mother was, how they were already sending her little gifts. As she talked, my mother's face glowed with pride, as if she were being personally honored by every good thing happening in Sarah's life. "Tyler's family is just on another level," my mother said. "It's wonderful that Sarah found someone who elevates her." I was standing 2 feet away, and still, that sentence felt engineered to land squarely on my chest. My mother never missed an opportunity to remind me that my failed marriage was a blemish. She couldn't wash off her own reputation. I kept helping anyway. I tied ribbons, packed favors, and arranged floral stems, while Evan followed me around, ready to hand me anything I needed. He was quiet, but he watched everything. When my mother made another comment about how different her daughters are, he shot her a look I had never seen him give anyone. At the end of the day, things took an unexpected turn. My mother offered to drive Evan home while I stayed behind to finalize the layout for the guest tables. I hesitated, but Sarah assured me it would be fine. "Mom will behave, I promise," she whispered with a small grin. I wanted to believe her. I really did. By the time I got home, Evan was already in his room reading quietly. My mother's car was gone. I walked upstairs to check on him. He closed the book the moment I entered. "Mom," he said, "Grandma said things again." My heart tightened. What did she say this time? "She said you were always the mistake child. She said Aunt Sarah saved the family name." I sat on the edge of the bed, trying not to let the sting show. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." But then he reached under his pillow and pulled out a small leather-bound journal. "She left this in the car," he said. "I didn't read it, but she was writing in it earlier. She said adults get to say the truth there." I held the journal in my hands. It felt heavy, like something that carried secrets neither of us were prepared for. "Mom," he whispered, "I don't like the way she talks about you. I don't like how she makes you feel small." I smoothed his hair and kissed his forehead, but inside, something deeper stirred. That journal wasn't just forgotten. It was a spark waiting to ignite everything I had spent years holding together. And my son, sweet, loyal, fiercely protective Evan, was already preparing to defend me in a way I never defended myself. The days leading up to the engagement party felt like walking on a tightrope, stretched over years of unspoken resentment. The more I tried to stay balanced, the more my mother pushed, and the more Evan watched with a growing sense of injustice that no 9-year-old should have to understand. After Evan handed me her journal, I debated whether to read it. I moved from the kitchen to the couch, then to my bedroom, the leather-bound book heavy in my hands. It wasn't the kind of journal with harmless reflections or grocery lists. It felt intentional, personal, and if I opened it, I knew there would be no turning back. I didn't open it that night. Instead, I put it in my dresser drawer and convinced myself that whatever was in it couldn't possibly be important enough to disrupt Sarah's engagement weekend. But the truth has a way of pulling at you even when you try to ignore it. The next morning, when Evan left for school, I opened the journal. Not out of curiosity, but because something in my son's voice the night before wouldn't leave me alone. He wasn't being dramatic. He wasn't misinterpreting. He was reflecting the truth I had spent years avoiding. The first few pages were about mundane things, lists, reminders, frustrations with my father's habits, and then, buried in the middle, I found her entry from several years ago. If Sarah ever knew about Caleb Turner, everything would crumble. She would never forgive me. David would walk away. I can't let the truth destroy this family. Sarah deserves the version of me that raised her, not the mistakes I made before she was born. My hands shook as I read it. I reread the name, Caleb Turner, 3 times to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. A name I had never heard in my life, a name that wasn't my father's. I kept flipping through pages, and each line revealed a truth more devastating than the last. According to the entries, my mother had gotten pregnant with Sarah before marrying my father, and she never told him. She never told anyone. She admitted the guilt ate at her, but she believed maintaining the lie was necessary for the greater good of our family's reputation. Sarah didn't know. My father didn't know. And my mother certainly didn't plan for me to know. My first instinct was to close the journal and pretend I hadn't seen anything. This wasn't mine to reveal. It wasn't my business. Except it became my business the moment my mother weaponized her pride to belittle me again and again. She had no problem humiliating me publicly while guarding her own secrets like priceless jewels. But even then, I didn't plan to say anything. The conflict began spiraling on its own. 2 nights before the engagement party, we gathered at a local event hall to finalize table arrangements. Tyler's mother, Karen Brooks, was there. Warm, polite, dressed in a soft navy blouse with a gold pendant. She greeted me sincerely, asking about Evan, asking about my work, asking about the best places to eat locally. She treated me like a human being, which already put her miles above my own mother. Meanwhile, my mother floated around the room, brushing imaginary dust off white tablecloths, adjusting floral vases by millimeters, and charming Tyler's family with over-the-top praise for Sarah. That part wasn't unusual. What was unusual was how boldly she ignored me. Every time I walked over to help, she found a way to make me feel unnecessary. "Rachel, maybe step aside. You're making the centerpiece look off balance." "Rachel, that color ribbon doesn't match. Let Sarah handle this." "Rachel, you don't need to hover. Let the experts do their work." Hover. Experts. Step aside. I felt the familiar sting crawl up my spine, but what hurt more was seeing Evan standing behind her, watching her dismiss me like I was an inconvenience. He tugged at my jacket and whispered, "Why does she talk to you like you're no one?" My throat tightened. "It's complicated, sweetheart." He shook his head. "No, it's not. She's mean." His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough for my mother to hear the tail end of his sentence. She turned to him with a tight smile. "Evan, honey, adults are talking. Go sit down." He glared at her in a way that stunned even me. "Mom's an adult too," he said quietly. My mother's smile flickered. I could see it happening. My son, the gentle, observant, soft-hearted kid, was reaching a breaking point, not because he was being mistreated, but because I was. When we got home that night, he sat at the dining table with clenched fists. "She's going to say something bad at the party. I can feel it," he said. I tried to reassure him. "We'll handle it. We always do." He shook his head firmly. "Not this time, Mom." And when he said that, I could feel the shift, the moment a child decides enough is enough. I didn't realize then that every second of pain he witnessed was fueling the moment that would shatter our entire family 2 nights later. The conflict wasn't just the secret in the journal. It was the years of cruelty that pushed my son to become the one person willing to speak the truth no adult dared to say. The moment before everything changed began with the gentle clinking of champagne glasses. Tyler's father had just finished giving a warm, heartfelt toast about love, resilience, and family unity. People laughed politely. Tyler squeezed Sarah's hand, and she glowed the way only a woman deeply loved can glow. The string lights above the venue shimmered softly, reflecting in crystal glasses, casting warm golden shadows across the room. Everything looked perfect. Everything was seconds away from being destroyed. My mother stood up with her trademark proud smile, the one she saved for occasions where she could showcase Sarah, her prized accomplishment, to the world. She held her champagne flute high and cleared her throat dramatically. "If everyone could give me just a moment," she announced. "As Sarah's mother, it brings me so much joy to celebrate my daughter, my successful daughter." A few people smiled, thinking it was harmless flattery, but those of us who knew her felt the edge beneath the words. Sarah's smile fell half an inch. My father stared down at his shoes. Evan squeezed my hand tighter. My mother continued, oblivious or uncaring about the discomfort rippling through the room. "Sarah has always been the light of our family. She brings us pride, stability, and grace. She is everything a mother could hope for." My heart sank. I knew where this was going. I prayed, truly prayed, that she would stop there. But she didn't. "And I'm just grateful," she said loudly, "that at least one of my daughters makes our family look good." There it was. A few people gasped. Someone coughed to mask the awkwardness. Karen Brooks, Tyler's mother, glanced at me with genuine concern. Sarah's body went stiff. Even Tyler stared at my mother in shock, but the only reaction that mattered came from the child sitting next to me. Evan's fingers tightened around my hand so sharply it almost hurt. He let go, slid off his chair, and before I could catch him, he walked toward the center of the room with steady, confident steps. My heart stopped. "Evan," I whispered. "No, please don't." But he didn't turn back. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look afraid. He stood directly beside my mother, who looked down at him with mild annoyance, as if he were interrupting her spotlight. "Sweetheart, go sit down," she whispered through clenched teeth. Evan lifted a small glass of orange juice like it was a formal toast. His voice was clear, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Grandma," he said, "should I read the diary you left at our house?" The sound of the room dying was immediate, flat, absolute. My mother froze. Her eyes widened with naked fear. People didn't breathe. They didn't blink. They didn't move. It was the kind of silence that happens when someone drops a truth so heavy it cracks the floor beneath it. Sarah looked confused. "What diary?" she asked quietly, turning toward our mother. My father's face drained to a shade I had never seen before. Tyler looked between them like he suddenly realized he didn't know this family at all. Evan continued, his voice steady as stone. "The diary where you wrote about Aunt Sarah's real father." My mother stumbled back a step. "Evan, stop!" Her voice shook. He reached into the pocket of his blazer and pulled out the small leather-bound journal. "You wrote everything in here. How you lied to Grandpa David. How you never told Aunt Sarah the truth." Gasps spread like wildfire. Sarah's body trembled as she stepped toward her. "Mom, what is he talking about?" My mother tried to grab the journal, but Evan stepped back, protected by 100 unseen walls of truth he had built over the past week. I finally stood and moved toward him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Evan, give it to me." He shook his head. "No, Mom, she hurt you. She keeps hurting you, and she pretends like she's perfect." My throat tightened, but I didn't stop him. Sarah reached for the journal with shaking hands. "Mom, is this true? Who is Caleb Turner?" My mother's lips trembled violently. She looked around, cornered not by anger, but by her own lies. My father whispered, "Linda, please tell me he's lying." But Evan wasn't lying, and the journal didn't lie either. My mother collapsed into a chair, wiping her eyes as she whispered, "I never wanted this to come out this way." Sarah's voice cracked. So it's true? My mother nodded once, painfully slow. The truth detonated like a bomb. Every emotion, betrayal, shock, heartbreak, shot through the room with brutal precision. Sarah sobbed into Tyler's arms. My father walked out of the venue without a word. Guests whispered in stunned disbelief, and my mother sat alone in the center of the devastation she created. But through all of it, Evan stood tall, holding my hand tightly. He didn't expose the truth out of cruelty. He did it because no one else would. He did it because he loved me enough to speak when I never did. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt seen, because my son, my brave, fierce son, chose me in a room where no one ever had. The hours after Evan's revelation felt like watching a house collapse in slow motion. Every beam, every wall, every perfectly decorated moment that my mother had crafted for Sarah's engagement cracked in half. But instead of feeling triumphant, I felt an overwhelming mixture of grief, shock, and strange relief. Years of emotional weight were suddenly exposed, dragged into the light by a 9-year-old boy who refused to stay silent. After the truth fell, no one knew what to do. Even the music stopped, as if the speakers themselves were stunned. Guests stood frozen, unsure of whether to stay, leave, or offer help. Sarah trembled uncontrollably while Tyler guided her to a chair, his arm wrapped around her shoulders as she cried into her hands. My mother, who had always been in control, who always managed the narrative, who always made herself look flawless, now sat slumped in a chair like a woman who had suddenly aged 10 years. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks. Her hands shook violently. She kept whispering, "I didn't want this. I didn't want this," as if repeating the words could turn back time. My father didn't return for almost 30 minutes. When he finally walked back in, the look on his face said everything. Heartbreak, disbelief, fury, betrayal. He didn't yell, didn't throw anything, didn't even ask questions. He simply looked at my mother and said in a voice so low it chilled the room, "How could you?" My mother reached for him, but he pulled back. "How long?" he asked. "How many years did you look me in the eye and lie to me?" She cried harder. I was scared. I wanted stability. I wanted a family. "And you thought lying to me was the foundation for that?" he asked, shaking his head. "You didn't just lie to me. You lied to my daughter. You lied to all of us." Sarah finally lifted her tear-streaked face. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "You let me grow up believing a man who wasn't my father actually was." My mother sobbed. "I didn't want you to see me as a failure." The irony of that sentence nearly knocked the air out of me. She had spent decades calling me the family disappointment, all while hiding the biggest mistake of her own life. I didn't say a word. There was nothing left for me to add. The truth had already carved its way through the entire family like a blade. Once most guests quietly slipped out, giving our family space, I knelt beside Evan. He sat on a chair against the wall, knees tucked to his chest, looking smaller now that the adrenaline had worn off. I brushed his hair back gently. "You were very brave," I told him softly, "but you also went through something big tonight. Are you okay?" He nodded slowly. "I'm okay, Mom. I didn't mean to ruin everything. I just didn't want her to hurt you again." My chest tightened. "You didn't ruin anything. You told the truth. But I'm sorry you felt like you had to." He leaned against me, and I wrapped my arms around him. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel everything. The years of my mother's comments, the subtle shaming, the outright insults, the dismissive tone, the way she acted like my very existence embarrassed her. And through all of that, Evan had watched me try to hold myself together. He saw the cracks even when I pretended they weren't there. Later, Sarah sat next to me, her face pale and swollen from crying. She looked at me with a raw expression I had never seen from her before. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I blinked in surprise. "Why are you apologizing?" "Because I never saw it," she said. "I never saw how Mom treated you. I thought it was just sibling stuff. I never realized how cruel she was. I never realized how much you endured alone." I took her hand. "You weren't supposed to see it. She never treated you that way." "But that's the problem," she said. "I should have noticed. I should have asked why she talked about you the way she did." Her voice cracked. "And now, everything I thought I knew about my life is different." I squeezed her hand gently. "I'm here. Whatever happens next, we'll figure it out together." In the days that followed, the family dynamic shifted in ways I could never have predicted. My father moved into my brother's guest house temporarily while he processed everything. Sarah reached out to Caleb Turner, her biological father, after a difficult conversation with my mother. It wasn't easy, but she wanted answers, not lies. As for my mother, she finally experienced what it felt like to be the one judged, questioned, and doubted. She apologized to me, awkwardly, haltingly, but she apologized. And though forgiveness wasn't immediate, it was a start, but the biggest change came within me. For years, I thought staying quiet made me strong. I thought enduring pain in silence was mature. I thought not fighting back preserved peace. But my son taught me the truth. Silence doesn't protect peace. It protects the person causing the harm. Speaking the truth protects the person who's been bleeding. That night, Evan became my courage, my mirror, my reminder that I deserved respect I never demanded. In the end, I realized that sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one brave enough to say what everyone else is terrified to face. And that voice, my son's voice, finally set us free. In the end, that night didn't just expose a family secret. It revealed something much deeper. It showed what happens when someone spends years shrinking themselves to keep the peace, hoping that love will eventually be enough to change the way they're treated. It showed how a child, small, observant, pure-hearted, can see the truth long before the adults around him are willing to face it. I used to believe that speaking up made me difficult, dramatic, or ungrateful. I thought silence was safer. But watching my 9-year-old son stand up for me in a room full of people made me see everything differently. He didn't act out of anger. He acted out of love. He acted because he saw someone he cared about being hurt and couldn't stand it any longer. And that's the part of this story I carry with me the most. Not the diary, not the secret, not the shockwaves that tore through the engagement party. What I carry is the moment my son chose me, the moment he decided my dignity mattered, the moment he proved that courage doesn't always come from age or experience. Sometimes it comes from a child's heart, the place where fairness still means something, and love isn't something you have to earn. Since that night, my family has been picking up the pieces slowly. There are hard conversations, quiet moments, and uncomfortable truths that still need to be addressed. But something has shifted forever. I'm no longer the daughter who stays silent. I'm no longer the one who tries to bend myself into whatever shape my mother approves of. I finally understand that standing up for myself isn't selfish. It's necessary. And if you're listening to this right now, maybe you need to hear that too. Maybe you've spent years being overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated. Maybe you've been walking on eggshells just to keep someone else comfortable. Maybe you've convinced yourself your voice doesn't matter, but it does. You matter. Your truth matters. And sometimes the hardest step you'll ever take is choosing to stop shrinking. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it meant something to you, if it made you feel seen, or if it gave you even a little bit of strength, then I'm grateful. Please don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who might need it, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Your support means everything.